And now it's time for the honorable mentions. For the Looney Tunes, let me take this moment to get a little personal and tell you how I discovered and got into the cartoons along with remembering the characters. You see, I was born in the early 1990s. In the history of the Looney Tunes, that's when their popularity made a small comeback on television and the TV series The Bugs Bunny Show was still airing. But back then, it was called The Bugs Bunny and Tweety Show. Almost on a daily basis for several years. I would always watch the show, and it's because of that why I have a really good memory of many of the cartoons from 1948 up to 1964. That, and I would have to watch the Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner movie so many times as a kid on VHS. However, as a 90s kid, I had personally witnessed firsthand the massive boost of the character's popularity in the middle of the decade. It was a movie that would immediately integrate the Looney Tunes onto my childhood and formally introduce me to these legendary characters. Looking back on that film today, it actually does make me wonder. How the fridge do you mix aliens, Looney Tunes, and basketball? It makes no sense. But let us find out how it can make sense, and let us slam with Space Jam. It's the story of basketball player Michael Jordan, who decided to retire and move his career to baseball, which he's honestly not that good. Meanwhile, in an amusement park in space called Moron Mountain, the owner, Mr. Swackhammer, made a plan to kidnap the Looney Tunes and make them entertain for his park in order to attract more customers. So the way he tried to do it is that he sends his minions, the Nerdlucks, to steal the powers of Charles Barkley, Muggsy Bogues, Sean Bradley, Patrick Ewing, and Larry Johnson, and challenge the Looney Tunes to a basketball game. Back in the real world, Michael falls into a golf hole and finds himself in the Looney Tunes world, where now he has to help the characters to face the Monstars in one of the biggest basketball games in history. So I think now's a good time to answer the big question, how the fridge did they come up with an idea like this? Well, believe it or not, it actually came from a commercial. Back in the early 90s, Nike released an ad for Michael Jordan's shoe brand, Air Jordans, where he and Bugs Bunny would compete against Marvin the Martian in a basketball game for a giant pile of Air Jordans. The commercials were so well known that it seemed like it sparked an idea at Warner Brothers to take that ad and turn that into a feature film. While Jordan was in the Warner Brothers lot during production, he had to train every day in order to stay in shape for the film. These include lifting weights by day and shooting some b-ball at night with other basketball players in a court that they took from Long Beach State University and temporarily moved it to the studio lot. When Michael had to do the basketball scene for the film, he did it entirely in a large green screen room and was playing against other actors wearing entirely green except for their eyes. Kinda like a green screen ninja, if you will. Speaking of the basketball scene, Jordan wasn't the only live actor playing the game.
Mr. Murray, something's really been bugging me.
Yeah?
Just how did you get here, anyway?
Producer's a friend of mine, just had a teamster come and drop me off,
He's not kidding, by the way. One of the producers of this movie is actually Ivan Reitman, the same man who directed the first two Ghostbusters and Stripes, all of which Murray was featured. Another element in the film that's actually real is the basketball that the Nerdlucks used to steal the powers of the professionals. The crew secretly took an old ball from director Joe Pytka that was his most treasured possession, since it was touched by a lot of the greatest basketball players. They scanned the ball from all different angles in order to have their computer-generated ball whenever it's in the hands of the animated characters. Originally, the son of Mel Blanc, Noel, was going to provide all the voices of the male characters, just like his dad did. However, since he couldn't agree on a contract with Warner Brothers, he was instead replaced by several actors. Also, among those voices, D. Bradley Baker, Bob Bergen, Bill Farmer, and Katie Soucie would only provide the voice of some of their characters only in Space Jam. Never again would they reprise their roles. Since this is a legit Looney Tunes movie, they couldn't get away without creating a brand new character for the film, and that so happens to be Bugs Bunny's new girlfriend, Lola.
Hi, my name is Lola Bunny.
Lola?
Yes?
Hello. My name is Bugs.
Originally, the role was supposed to be taken by Honey Bunny, who originated from the Dell comics and a few cartoons. However, even before pre-production began, she was immediately scrapped because she looked way too similar to Bugs. It's not like they could just pull off a Minnie Mouse and give Bugs a bow, dress, and eyelashes and pass that off as a new character. I mean, God knows how many times Bugs himself did that just to screw with Elmer Fudd! So in a matter of 4 months, the animators created a brand new character with Lola. Well, technically after McDonald's demanded change in her design because she looked like a teenager, but she still became Lola nonetheless. In order for the live action and animated elements to blend seamlessly, they brought in Ed Jones with his company Cinesite to work on the visual effects, since Ed had previous experience with that kind of film with Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Now, to explain the scenario of what the team had to do with the animation co-director Bruce Smith said, "It's not one medium with another constantly. There's animation with the CG environment, it's animation in the traditional environment, it's live action in the CG environment, and it's live action with the animated environment." To put this into perspective, this is an entirely different process than what was done in Roger Rabbit. Now that they got computers, the animators no longer had to rely on cells and handmade backgrounds. Thanks to the Amino software, it makes things easy for them to fully color the characters and give them the right amount of shading and lighting to look like they have more depth than they do with flat colors. Also, it would allow them to work on new environments like an entirely computer-generated basketball court where they can just add the hand-drawn characters and the green screen shots of Michael Jordan. The biggest challenge that came with this movie, though, is not actually the big basketball game itself. It's everything around it. I mean, they had to fill 25,000 seats in the stadium with nothing but obscure Looney Tunes characters. That's definitely no easy task. One way that they went around it is by the old copy-paste trick. Spread a few clones here and there and sometimes change their color and it should work fine. But they can't do that with all of them because if you do it too much, then it would become a bit noticeable. Another way that they cheated through this is by putting live actors in weird costumes with cartoon heads and have them applaud in the audience. Thus, when you don't focus on who's watching the game, it gives out the perfect illusion of a full house. When it was released on November 15th, 1996, it was the first ever film to be released under Warner Bros. Feature Animation. When the critics gave their thoughts on it, they were rather mixed. On one hand, they loved the technical achievements it made, Michael Jordan gave a surprisingly great performance, and the Looney Tunes were still as funny as they were before. But were not fully sold by how it was based on a Nike commercial and have a weak story. However, one person who was not happy with the film was actually Chuck Jones. He hated the depiction of the Looney Tunes here by stating that most of the dialogue are things that the characters would never say, and that Bugs would have easily handled the Monstars all by himself. But regardless on how the movie was viewed, it was a big hit at the box office, making $90 million domestically and $230 million worldwide, making it the third highest grossing sports film and the highest grossing basketball film of all time. The song that came out of the film, I Believe I Can Fly by R. Kelly, also became a massive hit, as it went up to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, won 3 Grammy Awards, and still remains as one of R. Kelly's most memorable singles. The movie would then go and win an Annie Award for Technical Achievement, and receive 3 additional nominations for Best Directing, Best Producing, and Best Animated Feature. The movie would also have a promotional website that even after 20 years, it would still be up to the public to see, where entering the site is like a time capsule to a much simpler time on the internet. Afterwards, the Monstars would make a cameo appearance in the Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain crossover, Star Warners, and Michael would still be hanging out with the Looney Tunes in some MCI commercials. As for Lola, she would remain as the new member of the Looney Tunes, appearing in a few games and a cameo in Tweety's High-Flying Adventure, have a spin-off character called Lexi Bunny in Lunatics Unleashed, and have a prominent role in the Looney Tunes show. Later on, the movie would become a cult classic, introducing a brand new generation to the Looney Tunes and sparked some new interest in basketball, showing that the world really wanted to jam. But it still leaves us with one question. Would we do it again? You know, originally I thought about ending it right here, but then I got a little bit guilty to not mention this one as well. Sure, this is not as iconic or remembered as much as Space Jam, but it should still be worth noting as it is the movie that is purely dedicated to the Looney Tunes. So for the second honorable mention, we have Looney Tunes Back in Action. It's about DJ, a stuntman working at Warner Brothers, who was asked to throw out Daffy Duck for always asking to get equal billings with Bugs Bunny. Suddenly, he discovered that his dad is actually a secret agent and was kidnapped by the head of the Acme Corporation, Mr. Chairman, since his plan is to turn the entire human race into monkeys by stealing the Blue Monkey Diamond. So it's up to DJ and Daffy, along with the WB's Vice President of Comedy, Kate Houghton, and Bugs, to rescue DJ's dad and save the diamond from the evil chairman. Originally, this was all supposed to be a sequel to Space Jam, where Michael Jordan and the Looney Tunes gang would have faced off with a new villain called Berserko. They had everything set up and brought back the directors from the first film like Joe Pytka, Spike Brandt, and Tony Cervone. However, Warner Brothers failed to bring back possibly the most important person for this movie, Michael Jordan, who declined to return. This led to the producers to lie about it to some of their animators so that they can keep them busy until the movie was eventually cancelled. This was when they brought in Plan B. Instead of making a sequel, they would do a spin-off film called Spy Jam that would star Jackie Chan. But that didn't work out either since Chan quit the project. The movie would not show any sign of traction until Gremlins director Joe Dante came into the scene. You see, Joe is a huge Looney Tunes fan, so much so that he had an idea in the 90s to make a biographical comedy HBO series called Termite Terrace, where it would have looked into the early career of Chuck Jones during the 1930s. However, when he pitched the project at Warner Brothers, they told him,
"Look, Joe, we love what you do, but that's an old story. It's got period stuff in it. We don't want that. We want to rebrand our characters and we want to do Space Jam."
It may not sound like much at the time, but keep in mind, Dante hates Space Jam. So much so that he was calling his film the anti-Space Jam, since he was disgusted by how the movie screwed up the personalities of the characters. He wanted to make a tribute to Chuck Jones since he passed away during the making of this film, but Joe even had a hard time doing that since Warner Brothers gave him little to no creative freedom. This resulted the production to become a nightmare for both Joe Dante and Disney animator Eric Goldberg, who was hired to be the animation director for this film. Joe even stated, "I was making a movie for them with those characters, and they did not want to know about those characters. They didn't want to know why Bugs Bunny shouldn't do hip-hop. It was a pretty grim experience all around." In order to get Steve Martin into the film, he demanded that in the alien scene, one of them would be a Dalek from Doctor Who. Makes sense? Not really, but now we could say that this exists.
Pesky foul!
The movie is also noted to have several cameos in the film, and I don't mean the ones that came from the Looney Tunes cartoons. I'm talking about Kevin McCarthy reprising his role as Dr. Miles Bennell from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and John Cleese during the Paris scene. But Cleese's appearance had to be cut from the film. Also, Joe wanted to have some non-Looney Tunes characters to appear in the film like Tom and Jerry and Droopy, just to get that Roger Rabbit feel into it. But once again, Warner Brothers didn't like the idea, and the most that they could do was have Shaggy and Scooby argue with Matthew Lillard.
"If you like Goof on Me in the sequel, I'm coming after you."
Yeah, and I'll give you a Scooby smack.
For the voices, the only actors that reprised their roles from Space Jam were Bob Bergen, June Foray, and Billy West. But the latter, however, was supposed to also voice Bugs, but halfway through production, he was replaced by Joe Alaskey. This is why West has a bit of a grudge with the film and would actually blame Dante for the problems by being too demanding. As for other voices like Marvin the Martian, Michigan J. Frog, Speedy Gonzales, and Tweety, they were actually all done by Eric Goldberg, including one line for Bugs.
You're telling me.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey.
Now I must incapacitate you with my bubble gun.
I've discovered my roots. Doesn't anyone knock anymore?
The movie would be marked as the final film for some people before they passed away, including Mark Lawrence, Peter Graves, and composer Jerry Goldsmith, which John Debney had to finish the job for him. The movie would also be considered the last film by Warner Bros. Feature Animation. Well, technically they already shut down before the film came out, but this was a last-ditch effort to revive it. It was originally going to be out in theaters in July, but because of how Pixar's Finding Nemo became a huge hit, Warner Bros. Got scared and delayed it to November 14th, 2003. When it was released, the critics thought it was, well, alright. The jokes may be hit and miss, and the plot kinda sucked, but it is just harmless Looney Tunes fun. As for the box office though, boy, I don't know which one is worse, that or the production. The movie only made a total of $68.5 million on an $80 million budget, making this a colossal failure. One of the biggest reasons was that it could not have been released at a worse time. I mean, look at this. The week before it was Elf, it was out at the same time as Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World, and the week after was The Cat in the Hat. That, and Warner Bros. Did not want to promote the film because of the disastrous production and being over budget. This temporarily discouraged Warner Bros. From making any more Looney Tunes projects and even canceled some shorts that would tie in with the film. As of this day, Joe Dante doesn't even want to talk about either the movie or what happened when making it. The only comment he would say about it is just, still better than Space Jam. How's that for a production story? I bet old Richard Williams himself would be jealous of that one. So to end things off, not only the Looney Tunes are considered some of the greatest cartoon stars, but also they would be regarded as some of the greatest comedians of all time. Nowhere else can you find something on film that mastered the art of comedy, timing, personality, artistry, and more that even film schools are showing their students these cartoons to study both the art of comedy and animation. What began as a bunch of guys goofing off in an old shack making cartoons for a guy who couldn't care less of what's going on in there became an entire legacy of timeless pieces of animation, regarded as some of the greatest cartoons ever made that not even Disney can get on par with their shorts. No matter in what way, shape, or form they become in recent years, we will always return to the classic cartoons that gave us many laughs and joy from generation to generation. And thus, that's all I've got for the Looney Tunes. Join me next time, and I'll be prepping up a new batch of characters for the next animation lookback. I just need to double check though if they're ready for the next one, so yeesh. Yeah, I might need a bit of tuning up before I enter into the next animation look back. See you later, dudes. But for now, let us give credit where credit is due. Eat your heart out, Jerry Beck.